Fortnite is a shooter game, so why don't the best players in the world train their aim? You'd think that with millions of dollars on the line every single year, getting better at shooting people would probably be a pretty valuable skill in a shooter game, but apparently not. So why don't they do it? It's something that always seemed super obvious to me, like, you're the best player in the world, you want to hit more shots, why don't you actually train your aim? And this question has always been something that's really interesting to me, so I actually took some time to look into it. Not only did I ask the pros themselves, but I also spent 1 hour every day for 30 days training my own aim to see what kind of results it would actually bring. So what does aim training in Fortnite actually look like? Well, most of it's designed to train your mouse control, which I'm going to vastly oversimplify by splitting up into 3 categories. Tracking, which is the skill of keeping your crosshair on an opponent as both of you move. Click timing, which is the skill of being patient and waiting for your crosshair to be over the correct target before shooting. And target switching, which is your ability to smoothly switch from target to target without massively over flicking. The small minority of people who actually do aim train their aim nearly all use Kovac's aim trainer, but when I started this challenge, Fortnite also had bullet drop on all guns, so as part of my training hub practice map I built, we added a ton of aim training sections so that I could actually transfer these skills over. Plus, not everyone is on PC, has bought Kovac's, or plays on keyboard and mouse, so people could just use this instead if they want to. So I started my 30 days aim. Oh my god, this is so boring. Now don't worry, I'm not going to show you too much of the actual aim training in this video because I'd prefer it if you were actually awake, but oh my god, is this a tough 1 hour to get through every single day. Every day I would basically do 45 minutes of Kovac's and then 15 minutes of aim training in the training hub, and then I'd just move on to playing. Immediately, like day 1 after warming up, strangely, I felt my mouse control was much better. Interestingly, not only was it easier to hit shots, but my mechanics actually felt much more smooth too, as it was easier to ensure my crosshair was in the right place when I was trying to select and edit. I never really thought that my mechanics would get better by aim training, but it's just a bit of an interesting side effect of better having mouse control. Seeing that my bronze level scores were improving so rapidly over the first week, I started to ask the pros why it was that they weren't doing this, as it seemed like it was just a bit of a no-brainer. One response that I got from Vino was probably the most interesting though. Now he knows a thing or two about dealing damage in Fortnite tournaments, and he said that Fortnite's more about crosshair placement than just raw aim. Now, mouse control is a massive part of aiming, for sure, but hitting shots is 100 times easier if you don't really actually have to move your mouse at all. In a lot of shooter games like Valorant and Counter-Strike, crosshair placement is kind of just a given. For the most part, the maps are relatively flat, with few corners and peaks that opponents can be hiding in, so naturally players' crosshairs are drawn to these areas as they're moving around the map, and crosshair placement is just kind of complete basic in most of these games. However, Fortnite is much more complex than that, with players surrounding you in all different directions in an ever-changing environment. These other shooters don't have the building and editing mechanics that constantly keep your crosshair moving around at high speeds, and they don't have the third-person camera that Fortnite has, where moving your crosshair away from a peak can actually give you a visual advantage. So it's no surprise that the average Fortnite player's crosswind placement is just kind of cheeks. But Vino is really right on this one. By placing your crosshair ahead of opponents and waiting for them to walk into it, it makes it infinitely easier to hit large damage shots, as all you really need to do is worry about your click timing. Now this is tough to do, but it's an integral part of learning good right-hand peaks, and this also applies to long-range aim, as placing your crosshair ahead of a moving target and waiting for them to walk into it is a much easier way to guarantee long-range damage. This doesn't mean that improving mouse control isn't important, but naturally I completely ignored all of this crosshair placement advice as I continued my aim training journey. 2 weeks in, and my scores in Kovac's and in the training hub and increased on average by 7.7%. But in all honesty, I didn't really feel this translating over in-game. It was incredibly difficult to actually measure my in-game performance to see if my aim was actually improving. I felt like it was, but I was having some of the worst tournament performances of my life. I really felt like I was fighting horribly, and during this entire month experiment, I actually had some of the worst placements I've ever had in Solo Cash Cup in years. Ironically, I actually started this season off with my best Solo Cash Cup placement ever before doing this challenge, so clearly something was a little bit off here. On paper, my aim was improving, and I could definitely feel it, but there are way more factors to consider when it comes to fighting in Fortnite. Now, I usually only play about 1 to 2 hours a day on tournament days because I'm a content creator, not a pro, so spending an hour just doing aim training obviously wasn't the best use of my time. For a previous video, I spent an hour a day practicing my mechanics for 30 days, and I saw some insane improvements in my gameplay, but by just working on my aim, I started to feel like I was getting worse at the other elements of fighting. Did I change this? No. Should I have? Maybe. But I was about halfway through this challenge, so I just wanted to stick to my original plan and keep aim training for the hour, despite the fact that, to be honest, I just feel worse about my fighting overall. But what about pros who often play for 6+ hours a day? Surely one of these hours could be spent practicing their aim, and that would help them overall. Well, that's where you have to consider the skill card of these players. Let's split players' skills up into aim, mechanics, peaks, movement, awareness, and decision making, and then rank them all out of 100. Let's use Vino again as an example of this. Let's say he's a 95 in aim, a 90 in mechanics, a 95 in peaks, 97 in awareness, and a 94 in decision making. Totally just making these numbers off the dome, but just for the point of this example. Now, if I'm coaching Vino to improve his placements, and he's already dealing the most damage in almost all of the tournaments he plays, does it actually make sense for him to spend an hour a day practicing his aim? Probably not. That 1 hour would be better spent just playing scrims, tournaments, and of course fighting good players for practice to increase all of his scores rather than just focusing so heavily on the aim side. Now, let's say every fight he got into, he full pieced every player, always makes good peaks, never takes any damage, his awareness is amazing, and he's always in control of every fight, but he just misses every shot. And then we could say that his aim was like a 75 instead. Yeah, in this scenario, it might make sense to spend some time aim training, as clearly it was a weak point holding him back. Now, I miss 50% of my shots, so why is aim training making me a bit worse? Well, if I do the same example on myself, let's just say I'm pretty much 50 across the board, does it really make that much sense for me to spend an hour a day aim training every day for like a year? Well, in theory, I could get my aim up to like a 70 and hit way more shots and maybe win more fights. But if all of my other stats aren't improving at the same time, would I actually win more fights? Or would I just win more fights if I just spent that year trying to get all of my stats up to like a 60? Oh wait, hold on a minute. Did I just say a year? You really expect me to look at this little ball for an hour a day for a year? Is that really actually how long it would take? Well, this is a kind of common misconception that people have with aim training. People think that they'll just do a little bit and they're going to get some massive progress. I'll do an hour a day for a month and see kind of what improvements I make. Hey, that's literally what I did for the case of this video. But in reality, mouse control is a skill that takes a long time to improve, just like most learned skills do. This great video from PP, I hope that's how you pronounce his name, because that's how I'm going to do it for the rest of this video, showcased his aim improvements over the course of over 1,000 hours of aim training. Now, before he started, he showed that his Kovac scores were around in the bottom 27% of the leaderboards, and then after 100 hours, he had massively progressed up to the top 16%, and then after 1,500 hours, his aim was up to the top 2% on average. And these results were also kind of similar to mine after a 30-day period. So 30 hours. My results went from being in the top 37% of the leaderboards all the way up to the top 15% on average, with some being in like the top 2-3% as well, depending on the scenario. Now, this was actually really good progress over 30 days, and if I kept this up, I definitely think I could see serious improvements in my aim. So why am I not doing that? Well, the first thing to keep in mind is that PP's progress was over 6 years. 6 years. And never in my life have I ever played something so boring as Kovacs. I genuinely have never enjoyed making a video less than I've enjoyed making this one. Every day, I have zero will or drive to aim train whatsoever. It is absolutely soul-destroying spending an hour a day staring at this bloody little blobs that just rotate around you. Especially when you mess. If you have a rubbish day, it's so soul-destroying, I'm not gonna lie. This isn't a lack of like discipline or anything on my front. I did this every day. I have plenty of things I do in my life that I'm already disciplined. But if you genuinely hate doing something every single day, like I did, I hated doing this, it was so boring, then you are just not gonna stick to it long term. It's just not gonna be something that you're gonna stick to. You're not going to find it in any way interested, and you're never going to be motivated to do it, even if you do see really good results from it. And that's the main theme that pros I asked actually ended up stating. You'll see a certain theme here with the responses as to why they never load up Kovacs or any aim trainers. Trust me, I absolutely understand why pros find us boring and can't be bothered to do it. Especially when, naturally, just due to genetics, they have good aim already. They don't necessarily need to really put a lot of effort into improving it. The people who successfully use aim trainers, for the most part, just enjoy aim training. TP actually said it best in his video.
And as crazy as it sounds, aim trainers may be my favorite type of shooter.
So, if you have a lot of hours in the day to play, your aim is clearly a weak point, and aim training doesn't make you want to die, it's definitely a worthy time investment. There's no question about it. If not, I'd just advise spending the majority of your time playing the game. Personally, what I've been doing is just spending 5 to 10 minutes practicing my mouse control in the aim training scenarios in the training hub. Then I just work on my crosshair placement and piece control in some of the piece control scenarios, something that actually will translate over to my fighting. And then after that, I just play the game. If you want the best resource to improve your fighting in Fortnite, myself and Destiny's Jesus have just released the Fighting Masterclass, which includes content from us and over 20 different pros, including Bolts, Muzz, Reet, and many more. There's over 150 exclusive videos, and you get lifetime access for only $30. Even better, if you use code RESUB, you get 20% off anything site-wide.